Hello there, Facebook world, Twitter, and YouTube. Jay Cherry here. I have an update on the Connecticut mask lawsuit. And I recently saw some parents chatting in another group that I'm in about how we need to sue the state over the masking of our children. Well, guys, I want to let you know that there is a lawsuit happening right now as we speak today, this moment. In fact, there was supposed to be a hearing this afternoon and that was postponed. But I have an update for you on what's going on and what has happened in the Connecticut mask lawsuit that has been filed by the Connecticut Freedom Alliance. And you know what? I have notes here for you guys so that you can get all these links. Let me copy this, and I'm going to put this in the comments here. So I have a few things to share with you. Let me just get this here. So I have the link of how you can help the Connecticut mask lawsuit. Oops, and now, of course, as I'm trying to do this in this moment. Okay. So let me just get this copied for you guys. I'm going to put my show notes in the comments. So hopefully that works. And I have a watch party, so that might just show up in the watch party here now. But there, I'm going to put more show notes, and I'll get that on YouTube. There is a link, a GoFundMe page that you can help out to support the Connecticut mask lawsuit. And I'll make sure that those links are all available. You can PM me as well if you want to get involved in how you can help. Many hands make for light work. That's an old saying, right? So in the age of the internet and GoFundMe, many small donations help. I just want to say that. So there's astronomical legal costs involved with putting together a lawsuit, including hiring experts to come and testify, and also paying attorney fees and things of that nature. So unfortunately, the legal system is not free or cheap. So if you can make a $10 donation, $5 donation. Imagine if a bunch of people did that. How much that would help with the progression of this. But I wanted to share with you a very important update. So I have screen share here. So this is an article that came out a couple of days ago. Now, today there was supposed to be a hearing. Unfortunately, that was postponed. I don't have a date on when the next, what the new date is, but I'll let you guys know that as soon as I know. I just wanted to let you know that there are two new experts, and there's a link in my show notes to this article that was in the day. It says, sorry, I hate when I say this word wrong, an epidemiologist and a child psychiatrist are two of the new experts. So they've got, so I'm going to read you a little bit of this, and this comes out of, this is actually was in the Hartford Courant, and it was also in the Connecticut Day. Okay, so in the plaintiff's lawsuits, including parents of school children, at the Connecticut Freedom Alliance filed disclosures in Hartford Superior Court naming epidemiologists Newt Witowski and child psychiatrist Dr. Mark McDonald as the new experts. So what happened previously, they had two other experts that were disqualified. Great experts, unfortunately, they were disqualified, and so now there are two new experts. Let me take you back over to this article here. So here it is. So let's see. So a judge ordered the plaintiffs to produce their new expert witnesses, and which they did. I'm sorry, I'm not in here, so I'm not able to scroll. Hold on, let me get back over here. So the judge ordered the new expert witnesses by Thursday. They've got that. Okay, so about the new experts. So Witowski, who's the epidemiologist, is the founder and chief executive of biostatistics firm Acedra and a former biostatistic epidemiologist at Rockefeller University. You know, and it's really interesting. So the article goes on to say how YouTube removed a video earlier this year. It's no secret YouTube is censoring information. So I just find it interesting that everywhere you look, this is there. So this expert was censored on YouTube. Of course, the day is letting everybody know that. The problem isn't the expert. The problem is YouTube censoring information that doesn't go with the status quo, which is why we have courts of law and things such as that, because these things are important. It's never anybody's information should ever be censored. So let's go back to the article nonetheless. Okay, so they're talking about how, they removed that. And let me also check. Oh, the reason why he was censored is because he's talking about herd immunity. Very interesting, because there's a lot of experts coming out. In fact, there is the Great Barrington. There's a letter, the Great Barrington letter, and there are tons of experts coming out talking about herd immunity as being scientific fact, and that herd immunity is what happens when a virus moves through a population. People get the virus, and the virus mutates, and people build up immunities to the virus, and then it lessens in strength, and eventually everybody who comes in contact with the virus builds up immunity. That helps to also protect those who are more vulnerable. So a lot of experts are coming out talking about how if herd immunity is the way to go. That's nature, that's science, right? So more people get the virus and recover. The virus has nobody to stricken and kill in that regard, because people have built up the natural herd immunity. So this is Knut, who is the epidemiologist expert. So then they also have a child psychologist. And the child psychologist is, let me see, I'm sorry, I'm just moving down here. I got ahead of myself a little bit. So they have McDonald as a child psychologist, is based in Los Angeles, who is one of hundreds of doctors to sign a letter to President Donald Trump in May warning how virus-related shutdowns harm people's health in terms of suicide, alcoholism, and other problems. And we know this. Okay, so we know this. Let me show you guys the article, because unfortunately I didn't have it on there. So we know this. We know that the suicide rates are up. We know that there's other problems, okay? So it's just interesting how the article is just like letting you know that the expert signed a letter to Donald Trump. And so the lawsuit seeks an injunction. And what that means is that it would stop the mask mandate on our children right away. That would strike down requirements set by the Democratic Governor Ned Lamont and the State Department of Education that children must wear masks in school. A hearing on the emergency request is set to continue October 14th with Judge Thomas I'm sorry if I massacre his name, Muckhauser. Okay, so the state argues that it is following federal guidelines and that studies show masks are important in helping preventing the virus from traveling into the air and spreading from one person to another. In fact, State Attorney General William Tong's office said in a statement Thursday that is reviewing the disclosures of the new experts and will file any necessary response with the court. Doug Dubinsky, a lawyer for the plaintiff and Republican state representative from Chaplin, said the two new experts are highly qualified to testify in support of the lawsuit. Assertions that masks aren't effective and can harm children. Over the last 40 years or so, there has been multiple studies on the effectiveness of masks in the transmission of diseases, and they almost universally show they just don't work, said Dubinsky in a phone interview. So their two new experts are coming on, and the hearing was postponed today. So I don't have the new date, but I'll get that to you. And you can see in the comments, I did put it in the watch party. I don't know if that also went into the main feed as well, but I will post the show notes once I end this video. Make sure that everybody has access to the article that I just read you, as well as the mask lawsuit. Now I want to take you to something else, and this is the CDC. Just did a study. So the CDC just did a study. And now the state of Connecticut has been using information from the CDC. Cherry picking, which they're always complaining about, right? Cherry picking. So let me pull this up for you guys. I have it all right here, and I just want to share. Let me share my screen with you. So I also have a link to this in my show notes that I did put in a watch party, but like I said, I'm not sure if you're seeing that in the main post. And for Twitter and for YouTube, I will make sure that I share this in a new thread and put this all in a thread, all the information that you need. Okay, so I just wanted to share with you. So this is the community. Let me see if I could blow this up so you guys could read along with me as best you can. This is the community and close contact exposures associated with COVID-19 among symptomatic adults 18 plus and 11 outpatient healthcare facilities in the United States, July 2020. This This is coming out of the CDC, guys. So I got a link for it for you. And now what you're going to want to do, you're going to scroll right on down to page 4. So I want you're looking at a chart here. So this is a chart of the people who wore masks and the people who didn't wear masks, okay? And how often they got sick. So people who wore masks almost all of the time, okay? They had it all of the time, right? Almost all the time. They still got sick, guys. It's like 75, it's like 15.4, and then they have it at 75.0. This is the control participants, and these are the cases, okay? So you can see it right here for yourself. Who wore masks almost all of the time. So they were worn while eating and drinking, were shopping. Among adults with COVID-19, 42% reported close contact with a person with COVID-19, similar to what has been reported previously. Most close contact exposures to family members consistent with household transmissions of SARS-CoV-2. Fewer than 14% of persons who received a negative SARS-CoV test reported close contact with a person known to have COVID-19. To help slow the spread of SARS-CoV-2, precautions should be implemented to stay home once exposed to someone with COVID-19, in addition to adhering to recommendations and washing hands. Often, wear masks and social distance. Okay, so the findings in the research report are subject to at least 5 limitations, and they just go on to explain here the findings. Okay, the report. So reported use of cloth face mask coverings or mask 14 days before illness. So people who never wore the mask, okay, like that's like 3.9% of them got sick. People who always wore the mask, 108 people in this study, 70.6%. Always, right? Always. 118 people who wore the mask, always, 74.2%, okay? People who wore it often, out of 22 people, okay, 14.4% still got sick. Sometimes, and it's so fascinating. This is the CDC. I'm going to blow it up, see if I can blow it up closer for you guys so you could see this. Look at this. These are case patients and control participants, okay? And this just is giving you the, whether they had contact or not, the relationship to the person in the contact with family, friend, colleague, and the use of cloth face coverings. And let's take a read over here. So respondents who completed the interview 14 to 23 days after their test date, 5 participants had significant misgivings missingness. Okay, I'm sorry. For exposure questions that were removed from the analysis. Patients were randomly sampled from 11 academic healthcare systems that are part of the influenza vaccine effectiveness in the critically ill network, Bay State Medical Center, Springfield, Massachusetts, Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, Boston, Massachusetts. This lists the different hospitals. And like, here you guys go. So you can take a look at this yourself. This is from the CDC. This is a study that they did in July. And you can see here, people who, this is really interesting information. So the people who are always wearing a mask, always or often, were getting sick more than the people not wearing a mask. Okay? This is just like powerful information right here. It just blows me away that our governor is forcing our children to be masked. So I'm really thankful that the Connecticut Freedom Alliance brought this lawsuit up, and it's continuing. There was a hearing today, but unfortunately that hearing was postponed. So I was just sharing with you information from the CDC's own study that people who were not wearing masks, hardly ever not wearing them, and exposed to COVID, they weren't getting sick. Okay, they were not getting sick in this period of time. It's just a really interesting study. And I want to share with you a clip of a video from Technocracy News that I found really interesting. So I'm going to pull this up. Hold on a second while I share my screen with you guys. So this particular video came out of Technocracy News. If you're not following Technocracy News on YouTube, I highly recommend it. Patrick Wood, it does a stellar job. He is the founder of Technocracy News and the chief editor. Anyway, he has a neurosurgeon, Russell Blaylock, on for this interview. It's an hour long. I'm only going to play you like just a few minutes of it, just kind of maybe wet your whistle about the information in this video, which is profoundly powerful information. So I'm just going to play this for you. Hold on a second. I just got to get onto the screen. So here we go.
Because in my opinion, after studying this and watching people and watching responses and publishing articles in the local newspaper, what I find is that the mandatory wearing of a mask is not about controlling a virus at all. It's about controlling people. And this becomes evident as you examine the science and you examine your local public health officer's response to your resistance and your arguments, and you find out he's not interested in science at all, or she's not interested in science. They're interested in politics and control. So we need to look at something that's very important, and this is a little bit different than what I put in the brochure. I did a lot of study of the physics of mask wearing, particularly the surgical mask and the cone mask and the cloth mask, which is the most common. You see a lot of cloth masks around. And so what has been discovered looking at this all the way back through influenza mask wearing to see if it would help. What the people who deal with the physics of the mask and the breath coming through the mask is that there's a jet and a plume effect. Now, the mask wearing is dependent on the idea that when you speak or you sing or you cough or sneeze, you're spewing out large particles. And the large particle can travel, if you cough or sneeze, about 6 feet. With a normal conversation, it would travel a foot or a little more. But it's large droplets. And the mask was supposed to prevent these large droplets from spraying into someone's face that you're talking to within that 1 or 2 feet, 1 foot mostly. What they've discovered since then is that, in fact, it's not spread primarily by large aerosol droplets. It's spread by the fine aerosol droplets, which can travel 27 feet to 30 feet. It forms a gigantic plume as it's coming out. Now, if we look at a demonstration of this plume effect, now this is Dr. Ted Noel, he's an anesthesiologist, and what he did, he's put on different types of masks, and he's vaping. So he uses a vapor, the vape, which is primarily expelling intermediate sized droplets, somewhere between the coarse and the fine. The fine is less than 5 micrometers. So it's going to be a little bit more resistant than what's spreading the virus. So what you see on this is that there's a plume effect. And mainly in the surgical mask is coming out the sides. And it's forming a very large plume of these particles. And what they found in the research was that most of the virus was not in the large droplets. It was in the fine droplets that are even smaller than these. And that when you breathe, it's pluming out backwards into the sides, and it's also penetrating the mask quite easily. This is more, you can see the actual plume effect. And this mask that he's wearing is a little bit different surgical mask in that it has a sponge rubber across the nose to keep your breath from going up into your eyes. With the other mask, what you see is that the breath goes up into your eyes. So you're contaminating your eyes, you're contaminating out to the side. Now this is a cone type mask, and you can see here, these intermediate droplets went right through the mask without any difficulty at all. You get a tremendous stream effect of this plume going straight up and out both sides. Now this mask is supposedly designed to be very resistant to penetration and allow you to breathe. And what we see is it penetrates through the front of the mask quite easily, up through the eyes, covering the top of the face and the hair. Now if a person touches their hair, of course they've contaminated themselves, their eyes are contaminated, their face is contaminated. And if you look at this from the side, you see that this penetration here, if you're standing fairly close to someone, this plume is going right in their face. So you're getting absolutely no protection by this mask. Now this is a cloth mask. Here we see this gigantic plume that's going all in the hair, top of the head, jetting out the sides and coming straight through the mask, as if the mask is not in there. So you remember, these are intermediate sized particles. They're not, this is not the fine particles. Fine particles could get through even better, quicker, more extensively. Now, this is kind of a crude drawing I put together. And this is someone going through a grocery store. Here's your grocery store shelves. And he's obediently following the little arrows because you're supposed to travel in one direction. And you can see with this jetting effect, his plume is covering the shelf on each side. So as he walks down the shelf, he's contaminating everything on the shelf. Plus, it's continuing the plume straight up and the plume out the straight out of the front of the mask. So this idea that somehow having these arrows and directing a person is going to be protecting, people know what you're doing is you're contaminating with this dense plume. Like I said, the vast majority of the infectious particles were found in this fine aerosol plume. Now, if you look from the side, he's following this store patron down the aisle, following the arrows, and you see she's penetrated her mask, creating a plume in the front. She's blowing it up straight over her hair, contaminating her hair, down her mask into the front of her dress, into her arms and hands, and whatever's in the basket. And then she's producing this tremendous jetting effect, which they found the greatest jet is out the sides and backwards. She's producing this huge plume, and he's walking right through it.
So this is an absolutely great video that was just released on October the 7th. This is Russell Blaylock. This was on Technocracy News, and I wanted to share that with you guys because it's a fabulous discussion, and there's so much information packed into what he's talking about with masking. Of just going into the grocery store is what he's talking about right now. But when we think about what this is doing to our children and the type of environment that we have our children in all day long, and a lot of schools, I know my school is preparing to open back up for full-time learning, and I'm extremely concerned for the welfare of my kids who are on a hybrid, and they're high schoolers, so they want to be there, they want to go with their friends. I've been dosing them up with vitamin C and vitamin D, and I really don't want to send them to school and every day, 5 days a week, to be masked for hours and hours and hours because of the negative health effects that can happen. I'm going to pull this back up for you guys here. So this is the CDC. I'm going to share the screen here so you guys can see this too. This is the CDC, and I was able to get those show notes into the link. So this is the CDC. These are people who reported use of cloth face coverings or masks 14 days before they got sick. These are people who got sick And this was a study seeing how many of those people who got sick actually wore the masks. So people who never wore the mask, didn't get sick. People who sometimes wore the mask got sick less. People who often and always wore the mask got sick the most. I mean, we have been looking at masks for years and years and years for influenza. I mean, think about it, guys. If masks worked, why were they never used for influenza? And a lot of people will say, oh, well, in the Asian countries, they've used masks, and China used masks. But they also had an outbreak there. So that isn't proving that masks work because they use masks in China or other countries like that, because obviously we know China definitely had outbreaks there. So I want to put this question in your mind is, if masks work, why wouldn't we ever use them for influenza, which is a disease that kills many people every year? We've had and we have a vaccine for that too, by the way, that we've had for 70 plus years of flu vaccine, and it hasn't eradicated the flu. It doesn't always get the flu virus right, and isn't even that effective, really. So not to get too far off into the flu topic, but my point is that we've been dealing with flu illness for many, many years, and we've been studying masks, and during that time, there's been all kinds of studies, and you can go and you can look at these studies. Check out that interview. I put it in the show notes that I was just playing for you with Patrick Wood of Technocracy News and Russell Blaylock, who is a neurosurgeon, who he's looked at all of these different studies, and he's written extensively on masks. He wrote a great article about masks, and he also just did this interview on October the 7th. So go check that interview out. It's chock full of information. So when we go back to the school lawsuit, Connecticut Freedom Alliance's mask lawsuit against the Department of Education, the Connecticut Freedom Alliance now has 2 new experts, an epidemiologist and a psychiatrist. The hearing was postponed today. I don't have a new hearing date. I'll let you guys know that when I do. I did put in the links a link to make a donation. The old saying, many hands make for light work. Many small donations will help this case propel and continue moving it forward. If everybody could give $10, $20 to the link that I've provided, that would do a lot to help with the legal costs. We want to proceed with this case. We want to win. We want to win this for our children's sake. If the judge agrees, and I've been watching this case, been following it very closely, and I gotta say that the judge seems pretty fair. I don't know this judge. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the different judges, the conservative or liberal or who put it in there. I don't know. Muscala is his name. Hopefully I'm not massacring his name. But he's seemed very fair. So he could, if the Connecticut Freedom Alliance can prove that the masks are an imminent danger to our children's health, that it's an emergency, there will be an injunction, meaning that the mask mandate at the schools would go away, and that would send huge repercussions around the state of Connecticut in general if we can get this injunction. It just would be profound. It would be amazing. Saying a lot of prayers about this. I really hope that the judge can be open and hear the scientific evidence. The science, it's not on the side of masking our children. The science isn't there. It's not supporting it. It's not. There are numerous studies that have been done for years on masks and if they work or don't work. N95 masks, surgical masks, cloth masks, all of it. And these studies were done in hospital settings where people are actually wearing the masks as they're supposed to, right? Because there's this whole thing with the mask, there's a video of Dr. Fauci talking about how, this was back in March, you can't mask the population. They don't even know how to wear a mask. They're going to be touching the mask. And that's exactly what's happening. So imagine this mask on a 6-year-old every day for hours. That mask is causing tons and tons of problems. In fact, I just want to bring you back to this little video. It's not a little video, it's a big video. It's a really powerful video. Hopefully I didn't lose it here. I'm going to bring you guys back to this. I want to get into where he starts talking about sickness here. So if you guys can see, I'm going to share the screen with you guys. Give me a second here. So this is Dr. Blaylock, and hopefully you guys can see the screen as well. But he talks about face mask-induced hypoxia and hypercapnia. He says most studies are done in young, healthy subjects. Testing was limited to 1 hour or one less than the vast majority of tests. Physiological tests allowed rest periods between exercise. Most testing involved N95 masks. Few tests involved cloth masks, which is true. I said they were looking at cloth masks, but we know more about cloth masks now with the COVID situation. I'm going to play you just a little bit more of this amazing interview that I really recommend that you go and watch it in its entirety. It is chock full of great information that you need to have. So I'm just going to play you just a few more minutes. It's a lengthy discussion, and it's kind of hard to cut and just stop and start because there's so much good information that you guys need to know about, that we all need to share about for the sake of our children. So here we go.
Virus alive, or is it dead? And when they looked at it, they found out, to their surprise, in a number of people, there's no viable virus at all. And only a few people are actually, I'm talking about a few of the infected people, are actually expelling live virus to any great extent. And some don't expel it at all. So, in fact, one of the best studies they did, in which they had an infected person with influenza, which is pretty close to this because it's also spread by the fine aerosol. And they used an artificial mannequin in front of them and had them talk to them, cough in their face, and do all the things that's normally done. And then they cultured this mannequin, and the mannequin would breathe, and they had a filter in there so it could collect the virus. And what they found out, none of the virus was viable. All the viruses were dead. Much to their surprise. So it can vary between only 30% are actually infectious viruses to none are, even in an infected person. Now, as you're watching these people walk up and down the aisle, what you're also seeing, not only they're expelling this turbulent cloud, but they're under the illusion, well, this is protecting me. Well, the air goes back the other way as well. As you inhale, it sucks it through the side of the mask, over the top, underneath, and through the fabric of the mask itself. So they're inhaling a high concentration of these fine aerosols, some of which are infected, some of which are not. Now, what the pamphlet was kind of concerned about was, well, what about the danger of just wearing a mask? Hypoxia and hypercapnia, high CO2 concentration. Because when I started studying this, what I found is there were almost no studies done on surgical masks or cloth masks in terms of hypoxia and hypercapnia. But the studies that existed mainly were N95 masks, because that's what's used in hospitals. And most of these studies were done in young, healthy subjects. And you see, that kind of skews things because, well, most people in society are not young and healthy. The testing was limited to 1 hour of less. And that's important because as you're breathing through a mask, you can compensate for a while, because what you do is you're fighting the mask, working harder to bring the air, the oxygen in, and to try to expel the CO2. But that extra work is increasing your metabolism, and you're producing a lot more free radicals. And you could do that for about an hour. And then as you get into the second hour and the third hour, you start fatiguing. And people that wear masks for long periods of time, one of their complaints is that they're very tired, they're fatigued. And it's because they're having to work so hard to breathe. This is what happens to people who have pulmonary problems. And they're having to struggle to breathe, is eventually they will run out of energy. And when they run out of energy, they suffocate. So one of the tests that they did is they actually looked at a surgical mask, and they did the study and the surgeons themselves. And they divided the study into young surgeons that is less than 35 years of age and older surgeons that were 35 and above. It goes all the way up to 60 years of age, 65 years of age. And they measured their oxygenation using an oxyometer, the little thing they put on your finger, which is pretty accurate. And they measured them during surgery, and they had everybody do the same thing. And then they had some people that observed the surgery, but they didn't wear a mask at all. And they stood the whole time just like the surgeons did, and they measured their oxygen level. And what they found was that over time, as you get toward the third and fourth hour, the blood gas, the O2, begins to fall. And it's a progressive fall. They cut the study off at 4 hours. But the interesting thing to me was that at 4 hours, it was still continuing to fall. And so that was quite concerning to me. And they also found that people over 35 had much worse blood gases than those that were younger than 35. So these are mostly healthy surgeons, and we're seeing these hypoxic events taking place despite the fact that they're only wearing a surgical mask. Now, what other thing I started thinking about and looking at this, because of this hypoxia effect and hypercapnia. Well, when I started looking at what are the criteria for admitting someone to the hospital and into the ICU, well, the criteria, according to CDC, that most everyone follows all over the country, is that the person can stay home as long as they can breathe without difficulty. But if they begin to complain of shortness of breath, they should be hospitalized and watched. And if in the hospital they complain of progressive hypoxia, of difficulty breathing, then you put them in the ICU, measure their blood gases, and if the blood gases are around 92, 90, you consider a possibility of intubation and placing them on a respirator. Now, what most people are doing that are staying home, they're wearing a mask. And the mask is causing a sensation of shortness of breath, anxiety. They're already in a state of anxiety because they're hearing this news constantly coming over the news broadcast of this terrible case where these people died and this couple died and this person died and what a horrible death it was, and they show all these terrifying things. So they're looking at this and they think they get short of breath, not due to any pulmonary problem, but because.
So I didn't want to play the whole video, but you guys get the kind of the idea here. I put this in the show links, and for Twitter, I'll repost that. You can DM me, and I'll make sure that you get a link to that fabulous interview that came out of. It's called The Great American Mask Ripoff, and that was out of Technocracy News and Trends. That's Dr. Russell Blaylock. Great interview. It's a little over an hour long. I highly recommend it. So when you're hearing him talk about this, and all I keep thinking about is our children in these masks for hours and hours and hours. And it is so upsetting to me, the harm that our children are being placed in because of this ridiculous mask mandate that A, does not stop viruses. Let me pull you guys back up over to here. This is the CDC. I'm going to pull this up for you. Okay? This is the CDC's own study. All right? Their own study about masks and people who got sick and if they were wearing a mask before they got sick or not. And you can see here, okay, never. Okay, 3.9%. Rarely, 3.9%. Often, 22%. 14.4%. Always, 70.6%. Always wearing that mask. Okay, see, the thing is, we're supposed supposed to breathe the oxygen unimpeded, okay? Unimpeded. Unless you're a surgeon and you don't want to drool into the person who you're operating on, into the surgical incision. I mean, that's what masks stop that from happening, but they're not stopping viral or viruses, microns, these little teeny weeny microns that masks don't stop. And as you heard in that interview with Dr. Russell Blaylock, he's talking about it creating like this plume. That you've got this concentration of all your just the moisture and the bacteria and all that stuff you're breathing into, and it's just pluming out the all over on the sides. And our poor kids, okay? So in the state of Connecticut, if you have not heard, there is a lawsuit by the Connecticut Freedom Alliance, okay? They are in the process right now. There was supposed to be a hearing today. Unfortunately, it was postponed. They have 2 new experts for the hearing, an epidemiologist and a psychiatrist. Good experts. I put a link. You can read more about those experts, find out who they are, and go look them up yourself if you want. There's a link there for you. I put it in the show notes and in the comments, and I'll do that on YouTube and Twitter as well after this broadcast or stream. And there's also a link to support the Connecticut mask lawsuit. Many hands make for light work. Many donations make the legal fees much more sustainable, like that we can continue on doing this. Unfortunately, it costs money to put together a lawsuit. So this is proceeding. If Connecticut, I'm going to pull this article up for you guys again too. Let's take a look at this. I'm going to share this screen with you. This is out of the New London Day. Okay, so if the judge Mukawasa, did I say that right? Mukasa? I'm not sure if I'm saying his right. So if the judge decides to grant the injunction, what that means is that our children could be set free from being forced to wear these masks. I'm very, very concerned for the welfare and safety of my teenagers. I would prefer that they don't go to school. But they're teenagers, and I want them to be able to make their own decisions, and they want to go to school. So my school district is going back to full-time learning, which it's like a double-edged sword, because I'm very happy that they can go off and be with their friends and have more of a normal high school experience, but it's not, because they're going to be in masks all day long, and then they're spraying these chemicals on their desks every day. My daughter told me that she has to spray this stuff on her desk and wipe it down. And I've been reading stuff about the chemicals that they're using to kill the virus. It's like toxic. So anyway, that's a whole other topic that I don't want to get sidetracked. I want to focus on the masks. So if the Connecticut Freedom Alliance, if the judge rules and grants this injunction, that would mean that immediately your child could go to school without a mask. Immediately. And that would be profound. It would be wonderful. Look, cases all over the country are winning against these draconian measures. In fact, the state of Michigan, I'm going to pull you guys up a slide here. The state of Michigan, okay, after a high court decision, Michigan AG will not enforce COVID orders. They struck it all down. So there's something to be said about that, guys. So don't lose faith. We need to keep the fight. If you can spare $10 or $20, hit that link to the GoFundMe campaign for the Connecticut Freedom Alliance mask lawsuit so that we could free our children from these oppressive masks that are not stopping viruses and actually are harmful. You cannot keep children in masks for hours. They touch their face. They have trouble breathing. This is insanity. They're even in the state of Connecticut are now masking 3-year-old children, babies, 3-year-old children. what is going on? The insanity is off the charts. So check out those links. Please consider making a donation to the Connecticut Freedom Alliance mask lawsuit GoFundMe page. And stay tuned. I'll update you guys when I know more. Hopefully that injunction happens. I'm hoping that these experts will be able to testify. We have the science. People talk all the time about, oh, believe the science. Well, why aren't you believing the science then? Okay? Because it's not the science from Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci should be tried for crimes against humanity, okay? Dr. Fauci is a bureaucrat who stands to make a boatload of money from his Moderna vaccine, and it is egregious what he has done. And he's on video himself talking about the uselessness of masks. What changed? There's no science that changed suddenly that would, for Fauci to now, oh, gotta wear a mask. And he's there, he's testifying, mask on, mask off, he's touching it. And all I could think about is how he was there stating it, that the masks they don't work on the general population. People don't know how to wear them properly. They touch their face, they take the mask off, it's crumpled in their pocket, it's in their backpack for school children. Hey, maybe the kids are swapping masks. I know my daughter did that. She's a teenager. She went to school without a mask. She borrowed her friend's. I'm like, oh my God. But it's like, come on. This is so toxic. So the Connecticut mask lawsuit, you guys can go check out that link, support them, donate. There are 2 new experts. The case is still ongoing. The hearing was postponed today. Check out my links. You can read the article in the Connecticut Day. Also go check out the CDC's own study on masks. It's highly interesting. And check out that video with Russell Blaylock, neurosurgeon, who does, and he wrote extensively about masks. He's also put together a pamphlet about the dangers and harms of masks and their ineffectiveness. So not only are they ineffective, they're dangerous. And the tech giants don't want all this information out. It's just the strangest thing. Ever since Facebook had their new update, I've just been really no hearing today. The hearing was postponed. So ever since Facebook updated their website, the videos have been harder and harder to get out here on Facebook. And YouTube is slowly growing, and so is Twitter. So hopefully these videos get out there and we're not totally censored sharing this information that you may not hear in the mainstream. Although there was an article about it in the Day last week. So, really quickly, want to mention this because you probably haven't heard about this, but this relates to PPE. I just want to say this to you guys. I'm going to be doing a video on it. But Bacchus Hospital is on strike. They're on strike because the state of Connecticut was making the nurses reuse masks. The people who actually would benefit from wearing a mask, like nurses working with sick people, are at a proper PPE and forced to wear subpar masks or masks that are old and soiled. And people are getting sick. Nurses are getting sick from this practice, and so they're on strike right now. That's happening right now. You can check that out. It's there if you go look. I don't know if that's, I don't have a TV, so I don't watch any mainstream news stations very often. But yeah, nurses at Bacchus Hospital in Connecticut are on strike for not having proper PPE. But your child needs to go to school wearing a mask. And if your child has to use the bathroom, if you have a little kid, then the teacher's got to mask up with all this stuff to help them if they need assistance. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. If I took you over, I know I said I was going to be finishing this out, but I have this here. So let me pull this up for you guys real quickly, just so you could just see this for your own self. Okay. Here it is. This is from the AAA. It's like the Adapt, Achieve, Advance. This is the state of Connecticut. So, they're just talking about it's rare that a child wouldn't need to use a mask and, they got to have a mask. And it just goes on. You really should, if you have children in school, you really should check this out. It's called the Achieve Advanced AAA thing for the schools that the state of Connecticut is requiring for all of the schools to for health and safety. I put that into quotations there. But this one is particularly disturbing because in this particular page, compliance strategies for schools, you'll see that I highlighted that they don't plan on eliminating this anytime soon. So guys, it's not going away unless the people make it go away. So support the Connecticut mask lawsuit for your children. What are you going to tell your children in the future? Are you going to tell them that you fought hard for their constitutional rights to breathe the air freely for both their mental health, physical health, and their basic right to just live and breathe the air on the planet Earth? So please visit the GoFundMe campaign. If people could give $10, $20, that really helps go a long way for crowdsourcing this legal case. And it is continuing. There was no hearing today. It was postponed. But we have 2 new experts, and that's really good news. So I'll be back with another update as soon as I get more information. Till then, breathe the air, love life, and fight hard for our kids.